we're live just like that. Nobody can sense a change, but all of a sudden we need to get like somebody whose whole job is just to do like the click of the like director's cut thing.
And like, yeah, you can go home now.
Yeah. Like there, and then at the end, then that's it. Quick shout out first to the 2 good Samaritans that helped push my car out of the icy snow today because it was stuck. But thank you to our guests today for being patient with me in this adventure of a Saturday podcast. But we're joined today by Avery Tom and Dakotah Charron. Yes, nailed it. Nice. We can all go home happy now. I finally got names right. So Avery Tom is the founder of the See Through Initiative, an umbrella organization for groups and individuals to plan non-for-profit events to fundraise for mental health initiatives. And Dakotah helps her on this.
Yes.
You're also a writer, poet, and creator of a local anthology called Behind Our Eyes, a local collaborative book containing written and visual artistic pieces relating to mental illness, personal struggles, loss, and more, and an advocate for mental health awareness. I threw that in there, and through alternative and creative endeavors. So what should we know about your initiatives, and what sort of impact have you had this far with them?
So for the See Through Initiative, I started it in 2018 in October. I was helping my aunt with her personal struggles with anxiety. From there, I was looking into different resources and whatnot in the city, and I actually couldn't find much of value. Something that wasn't costly, that was easy to find, and that was accessible. So that's kind of where I came up with the idea to make a book that would be filled with all of these different stories relating to mental illness and loss and tragedy. As you know, I write poems, I write books. I like to use my personal struggles and my personal experience in a creative way. Whenever I sit down in front of the computer and I'm having a very rough day, I can really come up with really good metaphors and things that I've experienced and what I've gone through. So that's kind of where I started. I've always written poems. I've always written different aspects of my life onto paper just to get it off my chest. I don't like talking to people about it. And that's kind of where I am asking other people to talk about it. So I need to have the confidence to be able to put my own stories into this book as well.
It's super cool that everybody has their own way of processing, whether it's stress or like things that they go through on a day-to-day basis. I know that writing was never initially, as you might expect. I liked speaking with people and being like open and having these kinds of conversations.
Sure, Riley will go for the whole 2 hours if none of us will.
I one time measured it. It's an hour 30 I can sit and talk to myself. But no, so there's a lot of different ways that you can process what you're going through in a day. So for me, I think it is like that communal sharing. And I actually found that was one of the caveats to starting this podcast, was like, I don't have enough meaningful conversation in my life, and just that open, and like, because it's easy to have the surface level conversation of like, hey, how are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. How are the kids? Like, and you're only staying on that surface, but actually talking about meaningful things, and especially like whether it's mental health or stress or just awareness on all these different things. It's like, it's important to be having these conversations. And so it's actually been in the last year that writing has taken hold in my life, and it's become sort of, how do I help others through that endeavor? Because I find that's sort of the introspective, like I really like reading. So it's, how do I help people through like an introspective method like that to supplement this podcast? And so it's been a lot of personal development oriented things, but even like I started messing around with poetry like last week. So please don't ask me to like read anything. But yeah, so how does that help you deal with the day-to-day things, just like writing and having a creative pursuit that way?
Dealing with day-to-day things through creative outlets it almost gives you something to work towards. So if I'm sitting down and I'm writing something that's happened in my life, I can then go and read over it, and I feel some sense of accomplishment once I'm finished. If I'm out taking photos, if I'm literally doing anything where my mind is completely focused on this one topic or this one item that I'm working on, it gives you a sense of gratitude once you're finished. And you say, you know, I went through all of this stuff that I just put onto paper in a creative form, and now I can forget about that and move forward and move past what was bothering me and what was really getting to me, which gave me these ideas to be able to write down.
For sure.
And like you were saying, everybody has their own way of coping and their own way of getting past something. So with the See-Through Initiative, it's really, I want to be that creative aspect for other people. Since creativity and writing and all of video making and photography has been my source of helping me feel free and really get away from my anxiety and put it into something else.
Yeah.
I mean, that's incredible. As someone who has never been a good speaker, even now, like Riley obviously takes the reins in this podcast for a good reason. Like
I think you sell yourself short on that.
I mean, I like talking to people, and I grew up very much introverted. I'd say I'm still an introvert, wearing the uniform of an extrovert, especially at work, because I'm a personal trainer. I have to be that person who socializes in that, but it puts me in a very uncomfortable position. And I'm very much the person where we talked about this on the podcast before, whereas Riley's the kind of person who figures out what he's trying to say through talking, whereas I think you and I probably have to think about it before talking, and even then we still screw it up, right?
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
And coming to this podcast is actually me getting out of my comfort zone. And although, you know, I've come up with this initiative and everything to try and make a difference and help other people, I'm still working on myself, and I'm still working on my own issues, being anxiety and having this social anxiety aspect. Talking in groups has never been my thing. I was always that person who needed the one-on-one conversation rather than the group conversation. So even then, I'm still working towards something else as well. So this is me really taking a step forward too, where I need to help myself, and I also really want to help other people with that.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think everybody struggles with that to a certain degree, where it's like that confidence to go out there despite all these things that we carry with us. I know that personally it's been like, how do I write about, a lot of the writing I do is personal development oriented, and it's like, how do I do that when I'm still a work in progress? Like, how do I do that and be honest to people about this experience? I think especially with that type of literature, it's like the aim is to be perfect, and the expectation is we can be perfect, and that's just not attainable. And so it's like, how do we be honest about this human experience that, like, and I think we've talked about it with lots of guests, where it's like, there's going to be highs and lows in life, and there's also going to be, you're going to go through pain, like or anxieties, depression, like loss, all sorts of things. And it's like, in a weird way, it's like, those are honest things, and they somehow bond us together. It's like nobody goes through life without dealing with this to a certain sense. For me, one of the toughest times was, I have like two that I always go back to, is like, one was getting injured from sports, and that was the only thing that I really had on my plate. And so it was sitting on the couch for like 3 months, just contemplating life and being like, I'm not doing anything. I'm not creating anything. I'm not, you know, I don't have a job. I don't have this. And that was right when I turned 18. So like, there's a figuring out process of where you want to go next. Then it happened again. I tried to start a youth programming business where I would teach physical literacy skills to youth, because through my degree and through my first job outside of school, it was like working with a lot of youth and feeling like I had something to offer, and then realizing nobody was interested in the programming that I had set up. Nobody was going to pay me to do it, and it would be like, there's just no reason to invest in something without a return. And so I sat on the couch for like a day being like defeated. And then even the next 2 months were like, now what? And so that's a really depressing time. And it actually took my own mother telling me like, you're depressed and it's okay. And it was like, and I instantly bawled in that moment. I was like, finally I allowed myself to feel. And I think that's a difficult thing to go through. But I find people don't talk about that often. Like, they don't talk about the times that they were down and the struggles that they've been through. It's like, it's much easier to be like, hey, how are you doing? As opposed, and like, expect good or whatever, expect a certain answer, rather than like actually have these open discussions or have these talks too.
Oh, exactly. And it's the worry of being a nuisance towards other people that creates that stigma around not wanting to discuss emotions or personal experiences or feelings. For me, while I was growing up, I went through a lot of different losses and deaths and whatnot, and that really took a toll on my mental health. When I was younger, my mom, she passed away in 2007. So that's kind of where I started to discover myself and everything that was going on inside of my mind. With everything that had happened after that, I noticed that there was a difference in how I was acting and things that were happening around me. So I started seeing a therapist by myself. I didn't want to tell anyone about it. I wanted it to be alone because, you know, everyone had already gone through all this stuff. And I really wish that I would have told someone that I was doing that, because in the moment it felt like I'm going to hurt someone by telling them that I feel like I have something wrong with me or that I need help. And now that I look back and I think about all the times that I bussed to Health Science Center to see a therapist by myself, I think I could have done that with someone else, or I could have been more open. And that's really where I want other people to know that they can be open and that they can discuss the topic and even have someone there for you, a support system. And that's really, really important when it comes to mental health, is having a support system and someone there for you.
I think I think of it as social capital, but it's like, if you have those people, like whether it's friends, family, you sort of have your different social groups that you belong to, but it's like, those are the ones that help pick you up and like keep you healthy in a certain sense, like especially mental health. But it's like, those are the people that you can rely on to listen in those times. And I think that's why I think of when you're young and you just want to be friends with everybody, but then all of a sudden it's like, you sort of find the people that are there for you no matter what, and that you can actually open up to and talk about those things with. And so it's really important to have that. And it's tough. Like, a lot of people maybe don't have the right, like, why you would seek out a therapist is like having a professional that knows how to like talk to somebody going through that. I think oftentimes it's like, we don't know what to do in terms of like having those conversations or being open or trying to be helpful in that. And I think that's why we shy away from sharing sometimes.
And I think that is one thing, is that when someone comes to, let's say, their friend, their parent, their spouse, whomever, and they are having a mental breakdown, or they just have something on their mind and they need to get it off their chest, it's not necessarily that they're looking for some sort of advice or some sort of help. They're just looking for someone to talk to. And that's where people, like you said, do shy away, because they're worried, or the other person, they're worried that they might feel uncomfortable and not know what to say in those certain situations. But you really don't need to say anything. You just need to be there. And that is one thing that I noticed, is I always just wanted someone to be there and just to listen. I didn't need advice, because regardless of any advice that you tell someone who's having those thoughts or, you know, down on themselves, they're not going to listen to you. 9 times out of 10, they're going to go, yeah, everybody says that. But at the end of the day, even just being able to talk about it is something.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the the idea behind the anthology and you know, behind our eyes, is that most people often don't know what mental illness is. We know the big names, depression and stuff, but what are the symptoms, right? When you can't get out of bed for weeks on end, most people don't want to admit that that's the problem. Or the small things. There's various other mental illnesses and such. I'm just familiar with depression, so I speak on it more often. But I think that's part of the process with the anthology, is to use people's stories, general people, average people that you might not hear their stories ever, come and speak through writing or through photos or anything, to bring awareness to what is mental illness and what are the symptoms. And you could easily be affected by these same things but not realize it. And then the second piece to it is, how do these people overcome those challenges? where did they go to seek help? Where were their resources? And can we bring all of these things together in an anthology that can be distributed around the city and bring all these people together and kind of create a community?
Yeah, so it's sharing the story, but also sharing the solutions that people have found within their own process. Because I know you talked in the write-up that you gave about going to support groups and things and just not really finding like that was for you or that was really helpful. So it's sort of like you have to find your own method of either coping or dealing with it, or to get past whatever you're living through. So it's like, and it's probably not the same recipe for everybody. Like there's not a fix all. So it's just being open to that, and it's great that there's a place for people to share those stories too.
I think you touched on it too, and what you said, Riley. And sometimes there isn't a fix. Sometimes people just need to listen, right? Or you just need someone there to listen. And I think that's where maybe people become uncomfortable, because we live in a society where we constantly need to fix things. Or at least I feel I need to. Like when someone presents a problem to me, I'm like, hey, what's the solution to this problem? I mean, how do I problem solve this? But you can't problem solve someone else's, the way they're feeling, their emotions, like whether it's depression, whatever they're going through, right? So I think it's good that people have an outlet to get those stories out there, that if other people want to listen to them, that's amazing.
Exactly. And for like you were saying, like you and I were both somewhat introverted but have an extroverted shell.
Yeah.
For people in those situations, they can really go and read through this book and say, well, I've never really discussed these problems, but things that are in this book and the stories that people are telling, I've felt this before. I'm not alone. I have other people who could potentially be there if I need them. And that's where I think that the book would be a really great idea, or a really great thing for people in similar situations where they are introverted, they don't like talking.
So how has this come together? Like, how did you find people to collaborate and contribute to this anthology?
So I've been using different marketing tools and whatnot, mainly just through word of mouth and through social media. I had put together just a really quick 30-second video just saying, are you a creator? Do you like writing or taking photos? Submit your piece. And so that's kind of, it all started with the book. So because I write and that's what I use to get things off my chest, I thought, well, people all over the city write. People love to put their emotions into some sort of creative outlet. So maybe that can be something that other people would enjoy. And so it started with the book. I started just asking around, seeing if anybody who I knew liked to write would want to submit something. Sure enough, I think I got about 15 pieces right off the bat. Now I need like 200 in order to fill an actual book, but it's a start. Mm-hmm. So just through word of mouth and social media mainly.
So it's a continuous process, like you're looking for more collaborators, contributors, and
exactly, yes,
people to. That's cool, because I wasn't sure where it was in the process or exactly what's happening with it. But it is certainly, I've never heard of anything that's like exactly like that. But funny enough, I finished reading a book that was writers more so on the writers that have affected them and the passages that have really been like impactful on either their writing style or how they write. So it's like, in a similar way, can we transition this? It's like a similar idea, but it's like, let's focus on how people can deal with mental health awareness and deal with the issues that way. So that's cool that there's so many people involved in it. So what is your writing or creative process like? Do you have any unique habits or things that you do in terms of that?
Honestly, not really. Most of my creative outlets, or let's say I'll be driving in my car and something is really on my mind, I will just come up with a random metaphor in my mind and have to use my voice to text to write it down so that I don't forget it. And that's literally how I build all of my pieces, all of my poems and all of my writing, is a random sentence will pop into my mind. that is it. That's how I start writing.
I like that you're practicing safe driving too.
Safe driving, that's the way to go.
See, I like the idea of voice to text, but then my stories go like A, B, and then like this random tangential route, and then end up at like the point that I was trying to make. So I'm like, there's no way I could ever sit down and coherently come up with thoughts without going on that path. So I think it's good. Like my method is, I have this app called Free Writer, and basically it's a 5-minute timer, and if you're not writing, the words fall to the bottom, and it like measures your focus. It gives you a percentage score at the end. So really but all it is like, let's start the thought process and get words out. And so I find that's nice to like, whatever's going on, whatever I want to be writing about, I'll just focus on that topic, go on maybe a little bit of a tangent, but then be able to continue with it after. And then I'm like in that writing mind state too. I find that's one of the most difficult things for me is like, until you're in that state, like it's hard to motivate yourself to do that. And so I try and make it a little bit of a habit. So I'm writing every day for 30 minutes after I read. So it's like the reading gets me introspective and thinking on things, and then the writing is actually that output too.
Yeah, and see, for me, mine all come from personal experiences. So things that I'm going through on a day-to-day basis or something really impactful. I can't just sit down and start writing if I don't have something on my mind. All of my stories and pieces have been on personal experience and things that I've gone through.
It's interesting. Mine's like somewhere in between there. I can't, to use an app like that, like Riley was talking about, that sounds like an anxiety attack waiting to happen for me. But I have the same thing where I try to write every day. I have a personal development journal, and I write just one page. That's all, and no more, no less. I have to fill the page up, and it usually starts with a quote that sticks out in my mind or that I came across in that day. And then so I quote a lot of just motivational speakers or other podcasts or just shows even sometimes, whatever comes to mind. And then either through that quote or through something that happened to me that day or how I'm feeling that day, I usually find like a theme word. And so it can be time. I've been thinking about time and like how I'm using my time. I'm like, hey, I'll put that down on the paper and then I'll just start writing around that word. And usually just I'm the kind of person where I can take something in terms of writing, just one thing, and write endlessly around that one thing. It's both a good thing and a curse because it can loop around in itself, and I just get lost in tangents in that writing.
I think that's with everything though. Like there's no right way to do it. I think that's the difficult thing about being creative. And I put that in quotations because I'm like, sometimes I feel like a creative person with doing a podcast, and then it's like sometimes I feel like, okay, no, I'm sort of corporate. I'm like, it's weird to feel like you're all things at once. But no, I think I forget my own process. See, this happens to me too. I get lost in my own brain sometimes. But no, what I did want to know is who your creative inspirations are.
I wouldn't say who, I would say what, because my creative inspirations are my personal experiences. So when I was in high school, I was using my English literature class to literally write poems based on my life. To start, I would write things based on, surrounding my mother's passing and stuff that happened there. So it's really just as the situations come, that's when my creative side comes out. It has nothing to do with a single person or a single thing. It's just experiences throughout my life. Yeah.
Yeah, we get so much motivation from like what's going on in our lives. And I think for me, it's like trying to think of exactly. So for me, being creative and like sharing my story is a way of like myself going through these dark times. It's like, what do I wish I had in those moments? Like, I wish I had somebody to listen to that had been through the same experiences, or like that had went through those depressed times and that actually had something to offer me. Like, it will get better. Like, there are things that you can seek out, things that you can do in those moments. And it's fun to have like this where we can share like people's stories with others, and to just have those things that really like bond us as humans and as people of this world. So how did this all come about in terms of like creating this into initiative, and like what sorts of, actually I want to ask a different question. What piece of writing or poem or anything are you most proud of that you've created so far? Have you contributed to like a local magazine or anything, or like?
I have not, no. To answer your first half of your question there. The piece that I'm most proud of, it's called 10 Years. It's one that I wrote on the 10th year anniversary of my mom's passing. And now I know I talk about my mother a lot because she was really a staple in everything that happened in my life after her death, and everything that I've gone through has been, it's come full circle back to the day that she had passed away. Now, I wouldn't change anything because I wouldn't be the strong person that I am today had any of this happened, or not happened, sorry. But 10 Years it would be like a stand-up poem if I was to go into a coffee shop and they were doing stand-up poems. That's how I envision it being said. Now, I've decided to put this piece into Behind Our Eyes because I'm asking other people to put personal pieces into the book. I need to step up and put my own personal piece in there. That is a very scary thing for me to do because it's based on my life and my depression and everything that I went through alone, and how I kind of realized that there's a different way of thinking to make it so that you don't have as many down days, and that you can actually change the negatives into positives fairly easily if you're motivated to do so. And that's exactly what that book, or what that piece is about. It's about how you can go through all of these things in your life, but if you stay motivated and you change all of your negative thoughts, it can be something so simple as, rather than thinking, oh, I don't want to get out of bed today and go to work, today's another day. Let's go to work. I'm making money. There's always positive sides. And that's exactly what that piece is about, is changing your mindset.
Yeah. So, highlighting the positives rather than focusing on the negatives.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I like that. And interesting enough, I kind of, you talking about your mother there and her passing, and you writing about the 10th year anniversary around that. And her being an inspiration kind of just made me think, because my father passed away when I was 10 years old. He's often a large inspiration in much of my writing, and people who have me on Facebook. And I put out these super long posts, usually once every 3 months or something, that like are usually motivational in some sense, or I like them to be for whoever needs it. But my dad has always been that driving inspiration behind it, and he's always, and one of the things you said was I wouldn't change anything. Because it made you who you are today, right? That you're grateful for that. That's what that's actually, I think I've said that in one of my posts too, or, do I miss my father? Yes, like with all my heart. Would I have him back if I had the chance? Probably no, because what happened, and it happened for a reason, and it made me who I am today. And if I don't have who I am today, then who am I, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's difficult to be that vulnerable and to share those experiences, like to write those things as vulnerable as is, but then to share them with like the world in a certain sense, but like whoever reads it, right? Like you're being open and sharing with the world. And actually that's where I find myself with my writing, is I want to be sharing it with people, but it's almost like, what is the venue to do that? And where are the people that are doing this? And like, who do I share it with, right? Because it's like, I think we all sort of find our way through this world and very differently. I sort of, growing up, was drawn towards sport, but I always had music and different outputs and things. But it's like now I have this set social group of like, okay, we like to play football, we like to do these things, but it's like those people might not want to read the poem that I wrote or the story that I wrote about a vulnerable time in my life. So I think for me, it's just seeking out that community of people.
And I think the thing around being vulnerable and putting your pieces out there is it always comes back to your personal insecurities. Am I sharing too much? Are people going to think that this is, too deep into my personal life and things that I've gone through? And you start to kind of personally attack yourself, not wanting to show who you really are and what you've gone through. And that's where people need to be more open and really share what they have gone through so that we can come together and end the personal issues that you would have not wanting to share those pieces.
On this note, one of the best writers that has spoken about this is Brene Brown. I listened to Daring Greatly, which is one of her books, and it talks all about being vulnerable, but she even does a lot of public speaking. So she writes books and also does a lot of public talks. But she's like, I'm never willing to share a story that I haven't come to terms with myself. And she's like, sometimes she has been that person oversharing, or maybe before she's even dealt with that thing, she's like sharing in front of an audience. And she's like, that's not fair to myself. So it is finding that line of like, you have to come to terms with those things before you're sharing them. You have to feel comfortable with them. And you have to make sure that like you want the world to know these things before you ever put them out there. So I think for me, it's like, I'm always an open person, so I don't really fear as much of like how people judge it. But I think with my writing, this was something that I wanted to mention too. I've always been not self-conscious about it, but I think I write like I speak, but I've also had somebody say that I'm convoluted in my writing. And that actually really hurt me, but it also motivates me too. And it happened to be something that I wrote for a workplace. So like it wasn't something that I sat down and was creatively writing and I handed it in and was super proud and somebody said it was awful. But it also was like, it was one of those, oh, I thought I was a pretty good writer and you're telling me I'm convoluted. And I think part of me maybe shied away from writing or was a little bit self-conscious about it. And so I don't know if people realize how those little things can sometimes have an effect. But now I use that as a motivator because feel free to interject.
You can
at any
finish.
point.
I think it always goes back to that quote. I think it's something along the lines of, you might not change the world, but you might change the world for somebody. Mm-hmm. And I think you have to remember that although there might be one negative comment, somebody else may have gone through those dark moments or those things that their voice has always been silenced. So to see somebody else speak on that allows them to perhaps connect with them or feel like I'm not alone. And I think that's what we have to bring back to the whole mental awareness situation in the world, mm-hmm. right? Is that these are all things that people are keeping hidden. They're things that people aren't seeking help for. And it's just a matter of sharing those things. And you might get attacked. Somebody might say that's too much. It is what it is. But you're going to have that one person who's going to reach out and say, you know what, you saved my life today.
And that's all. That's what matters, right? Even if it's just one person, even if it's like a sea of negative comments, and that one person, hey, you know what, you changed my life today. Yeah. That should be worth it, right there.
It is.
Unfortunately, I think a lot of people in society today are afraid to reach out because there is so much negative social stigma and social media just around mm-hmm. anything, right? Mm-hmm. Like someone posts something on Twitter and it immediately gets torn apart.
Yeah.
But it's a small minority with a very large voice that are voicing their opinions, and it's getting a lot of attention, and I feel like that needs to stop. And like the negative comments getting all the attention needs to stop, because there's just stop that, the focus on it. If we just, it's like the bully who, if you feed into his ego, he's mm-hmm. just going to keep bullying. But if you ignore the bully, eventually he's going to stop bullying because he has no friends and no one's going to know that he's there, right? That he exists. If we do that on things like social media and Twitter, then suddenly that becomes background noise, and those mm-hmm. positive comments will become more overwhelming and a good thing, and that needs to happen more.
I think that oftentimes those voices are much louder, though.
Sure, yeah.
So I think that if this is just not even in regards to what we're doing, but as a whole for anybody on social media or anybody sharing their story, whether it's playing the guitar in the middle of the park or something, they get one negative comment. Oftentimes the people who have something good to say don't bring it to light.
Right.
Right. They go, wow, that's really good, and then they scroll past and they're on to the next thing, or they walk past. So I think it's bringing light to the fact that people have something good to say, just bring it out, because this person is going out on a limb, and it takes a lot of courage to share anything in this world, whether it's a creative aspect or a business or anything.
Yeah.
not even on the topic of mental awareness
For sure.
or mental illness.
I acknowledge the fact that people are free to voice their opinions, but I think criticism shouldn't exist unless it's in a constructive format at any point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's weird though, at what point is some of this human nature? I know that it's so if people have a negative experience, they're 6 times more likely to say it than a positive experience. And it's like, what about us as humans just fixate on those negative things, right? And how can we change that? Like, is that part of how we are? Like, is it just those moments of like bliss and happiness and our cups are full and then we get to share that with everybody? And then the rest of the time, I think this goes back to that self-talk. And I think we have like, there's I would say like not a stigma, but like an overarching umbrella of people that are stuck in this negative mindset. And I think that social media has a big impact on that in terms of, we know we get dopamine release when there's people liking our photos and things. So then it's when you're not getting those, or if you get a negative comment, it has that effect of bringing us down. And so I know in my own life, it's that mental, that self-talk is such a big point. And I know when that's positive, if I can stop those negative thoughts and I can say, well, I know we've said like the audible say stop when you're having a negative thought, and somehow transition it to being neutral or positive. Because I think often, even throughout the day, we don't realize all these thoughts that we're being barraged with. And if your thoughts are, oh, I'm so dumb for doing this, or I shouldn't have done this, or I shouldn't have said that, or I'm an idiot, like you can get easily caught up in that mind state. So then on the other side, when you go, okay, maybe I made a mistake, but I was being diligent, or I tried my best, or whatever, if you can think of it more in that light, your mind state becomes that much better. I can actually feel a physical difference when I'm thinking positively and I'm able to deal with things. Honestly, today, with the car being stuck, and I'm worried about getting here because there's guests here, which are you. But I'm worried about getting there and is everything prepped? Am I going to make it on time? What are they going to think of me? And blah, blah, blah. And I think it's at the point that you can laugh at your own problems, or that you can laugh at the situation and just go, I didn't plan for this. I didn't mean for it to happen, but it's going to be okay.
Exactly.
And I think when you can get to that point is like, you're past it. You can deal with it and you're happy and like, life is good again.
Yeah.
But it's hard to say that to somebody who's stuck in that rut or stuck in that low place. And I think that's when this mental health talk comes in, is like, there are people that are stuck here and can't get out. And I think for me, it's I'm thankful because I like to say I have a twinge of optimism that everything's going to get better, whether it's these bad things that have happened, or job loss, or loss of friends or family, or whatever it is. I still have this optimism that life will get better. But if you can't get to that place, it's really tough to ever make a change. And it's honestly, you can see people that are stuck in that rut, and it's like, what do you do for that person? Like, how do you give them, my thing is always the hand up mentality. How do we empower people to, you can't drag somebody out of that. You can't just say like, I'm going to do everything for you. There is that the person has to do something for themselves, right? You can, I know Jordan Peterson has a quote or something that he says that you can throw like the life raft out and the tube and hope that person latches on and grabs on. But you can't force that person to do that. And you're more likely, if you dive in there for them, they might just drag you down with them.
And I think that comes back to the comment of, when we were talking about, you can give someone any amount of advice when they're in situations like that, but it's up to the person to make the change. You can tell them, skies are going to get clear again, but you need to wait for them to do it themselves. You can't force it upon them.
And that can be a really difficult thing. Honestly, addiction is something that I've had to deal with in my life very directly. And again, it's something that I don't feel comfortable sharing the full story, but it is something that I live with, dealing with that situation. And it's it's difficult because how do you help someone? They first have to make that admission that there's something wrong, and you can't do that for somebody. So all you can really do is make your own barriers. You can make your own, like, keep yourself healthy and all these different things, and be in a place where you can reach out with that life raft. But beyond that, like, what is it that you can do? And there's not really, you almost have to make peace with the situation and just say, I'm doing the best I can, but I can't change somebody else. So, like, how do I let this, you know, it can still affect you, right? Like, you never really get past, like, dealing with that thing. Like, it's still there. It's still, it still hurts sometimes. It's still whatever, but you can sort of make peace with it in your own way.
And I think that a lot of the times when you are helping someone or you're trying to be there for someone and you do your very best, you're still going to take all of that on you when it doesn't work out. And I've dealt with that a lot. My family has dealt with that a lot. When you're there for someone, you do everything that you possibly can in your power to help them, but at the end of the day, it's their own choices. Without going into too much detail, my older brother has had quite a few issues in and out of the prison system. Just recently went back, but the reason why I'm bringing that up is because, you know, we were there for him. We did everything that we possibly could, but at the end of the day, we are still going to take a lot of that responsibility for his actions, although it had nothing to do with us. We couldn't have done anything differently to change the end outcome of what happened, but we're still going to take all of that on us. And that is something that people need to work on too, is that although you do your very best to go and help someone else and you're there for them and you know, answer their calls whenever they need you and you're in your car driving to them whenever they ask you to, if they do something, it's not on you. It's not your fault. Everyone makes their own decisions, and at the end of the day, it's up to that individual person to do what they think is necessary, what they think is right in those situations. You can't help someone who's not willing to be helped.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. My sister, as a prime example of that, she after our dad passed away, she and I kind of went out on very separate roads. Like, we were very young. She was 2 years older than I was. She was 12, I was 10. But after high school, she got, or even during high school, she got into drugs, and addiction became a very big issue of her life, and to the point where she kind of got driven away from family. And we've tried to help her out so many times, and she burned the bridges over and over again, to the point where we didn't know what else we could do. And it took her near-death experience to realize she needed change. She, I guess, one night used a bad or dirty needle, and it led to an infection that spread to her lungs and double pneumonia that eventually spread to her heart. She was brought to the hospital on, like, her near deathbed, which she hadn't talked to us probably in months at that point. So imagine getting a call that your sister's in, like, health science center and, like, like about to die, essentially. So
I've gone through the exact same thing.
It's it's I'm sorry if this hits a soft spot, but
it's totally
it's
okay.
always been hard for me to talk about as well. I think I've shared it enough times where I think I've gotten more comfortable sharing it. It's still hard though; it never gets easy. But she ended up getting had to get emergency heart surgery where she had a 50% chance to live. She ended up living. And she ended up becoming close to her family, but she was on methadone for a couple of years after that to help her with her addiction, and we had to monitor her. And she had 60% lung capacity, or 40% lung capacity in one lung. She could never lift anything. She had to go for checkups. She literally lived on pills. Lithium was one of them because she was bipolar as well. And then one day she relapsed, and that one relapse is all it took for her to be back in the hospital, for her to have surgery again, another heart surgery. And they didn't think she would survive it, but miraculously, I can't talk, she did survive, and she recovered from the second surgery even stronger than the first surgery. But the problem is that the infection had spread so far during and the second surgery was such an emergency surgery that they couldn't wait for the bacteria to basically back off before going in for surgery, which is what they usually like. So there's always a chance of it being stuck in a piece of it being stuck in her heart that they couldn't catch or couldn't remove when they put the new heart valve in it, which is exactly what happened. She later then caught the flu about 2 months later, was back in the hospital immediately, to which this was in 2017. So on June 1st, I was at work. I got the call from my mom to come to the hospital right away. And by the time I got there, she was already gone and from cardiac arrest. So it's unfortunate that it took, in her case, it was a little too late for her changes to come. But I take that as I saw the change in her that she wanted to make. There's like that little glimmer of hope I saw in her, and that she wanted to help other people with their problems. And so I take that and I'm like, how can I help other people? Me myself, I don't understand addiction. I've never been addicted to drugs. I've never done drugs. I barely drink, things like that. So like I don't understand addiction, but like I always look at like personal development's always been my way. So things like personal training and talking to people on this podcast is kind of my way to kind of reach out and share my story.
Yeah, and my apologies for getting a little bit emotional there.
No need to apologize.
What really got to me was when you said, imagine getting a call. Now, after my mother had passed away, my older brother, I guess he's 25 now, so he's about 4 years older than I am. He took it the completely wrong way, exactly how your sister did. He got into the wrong crowd. He started seeing the wrong people. He was depressed and, sad with everything that had happened. And so he was in and out of the Health Science Center psychiatric ward quite a few times. There was one night that I was in a movie with my aunt, and halfway through the movie, she got a call saying that we needed to go to the hospital, and he had overdosed on something. So just everything surrounding the story that you just told it's crazy that someone has gone through pretty much the exact same thing. I've never come across anyone who I can say, like, I went to the hospital and, you're scared and you see them in the intensive care unit and everything like that. And it's the worst feeling ever. They're your older sibling. They're supposed to be the person that's there for you and helping you. And you're the one that's having to take care of them. And I've dealt with that for the last 10 years of my life. So having someone that has gone through that it brings me peace of mind. It really does.
I'm glad I can at least offer that. It's even like after death, there's always the question that lingers in the back of my mind, like, what more could I have done? Like, could I have, in the past, we've taken her in more than one time into our place, and then she's burned that bridge over and over again. And I look back and I don't blame her for any of it. Like, I forgive her, but like, I always wish I could have done more. And
I always do.
There's always the one moment that comes to my mind when I think about when she was going through that time, and she was living at our place, and I have another older sister, so she was living with the two of us at the time. And my older sister had found, I guess, a needle and flipped out, and she tends to overreact on everything, that my older sister, and goes right after her, and she's like, no, it's not mine, it's not mine, it's not mine. Like, I swear it's not mine. And she's like, I want to go through your room and I want to search everything. And she's like, you're not allowed to. And I just said to my sister at the time, I'm like, I don't care whether or not you've done it or not. I just want to know the truth. Like, do you have more needles in your room? Was that your needle or wasn't it? It's like a yes or no question. She's like, no, it's not mine. And then my other older sister, proceeded to go through her room, and we found like 20 needles. So like, that to me broke my heart, because that moment I was willing to trust her and like give her anything that she needed, regardless of what the answer was. And she still chose to lie to me. So that, when I always think that breaks my heart, but at least I always have the 2 to 2.5 years that after the first surgery, where she like tried to to mend everything with the family, and she became super close with me and my mom and my sister. So I'm always grateful for that, and the just kind of the positive message that she left us with when she passed. Yeah. So I'm so sorry if that's oversharing, but
No, I think it's brave of you both to be sharing, and I thank you for being comfortable enough to share those stories, because it really is not easy to talk about those things. Like, and just know that, like, I don't know. I honestly am a little bit speechless, because it is something that hits close to home for me too. I can't say I've been through those exact experiences, but
well, hopefully you won't have to.
I wait for the call that says somebody close to me has died, and I've sort of prepped myself for that, and I sincerely, like, worry about that from time to time, and it's I don't even know, like, and you 100%, it's like you do the best you can, but you can't change that person, you can't change their habits, and addiction is a hell of a, well, whether it's addiction or what you're dealing with, it's a hell of a thing to take on, either as that person or just to deal with in your life. Like, it sort of becomes this, the little that I know about it, is that it becomes self-sustaining, because you drive yourself away from the people that love you and care about you. The social circle sort of supports that. So you get, like, and then any negativity that you get from that puts you in that cycle even further. And the drugs are your release. The drugs or alcohol or whatever it is are your release from having to deal with those emotions. And so it becomes self-sustaining, and it's really hard to ever break that cycle. And it definitely takes that type of it takes admitting you have an issue to ever change. I was close myself to going down a road that I didn't believe in and was against my morals and my and I've talked about it a little bit before. My worst time with drugs and alcohol was playing university football and being involved in something that was so physically oriented that my life became out of balance. So it was just like my body was hurting, my mind was like, I don't know. I haven't had a concussion diagnosed, but definitely some minor head injuries and things. And it's like, how does that affect you, that constant state of pain? And for me, I always felt a step behind people, and I wasn't willing to do steroids. To this day, I can honestly say I never did. But I packed myself full of supplements and anything over the counter, and we now know that those can be unsafe too. So it was a stressful time, because that was my goal in life. That's what I wanted, but I didn't get from it what I wanted to, which sort of leads you to, okay, I'm going to drink away my sorrows in my weekend because my body's sore, and I want to have fun during the week. I barely have time to look up because I'm always in meetings or in classes at that time or whatever. And then all of a sudden, MDMA came part of that, and alcohol, and it wasn't until later that other drugs went in there too. But it was a really, like, unsafe time, and it was, I don't regret it, because I am who I am today, and I very much feel past that, but I just think of how close I was to losing myself to that life, like to feeding into that and becoming addicted and not being able to get out and separating myself from my family and having them angry at me, the thing that I swore that I'd never do. And so I can't even say, like, what saved me from going down that path. I know that I saw where it ended up, and I knew it wasn't good. And so I decided to shift, and a lot of things happened. I got into a relationship that was pretty stable, and I didn't go to those places or do those things. So I'm thankful for that relationship that sort of took me out of it. But those habits, like, they've sort of come and gone, but now I do feel in a place where I'm finally past it. Like, I feel that I'm comfortably living, and I don't feel like I ever want to use drugs, like, whatever. I still feel comfortable in my relationship with alcohol, but I know that I don't want to go down a different path. And, like, yeah, I feel like somebody who, like, dipped a foot in and was able to get out, but it's tough when you're already drowning, right? Yeah, and so that's been my experience with it. I wish I had something to say to people that are going through something similar. What I realized, and the biggest realization, were the people around me and the relationships that I had were actually empty. These people didn't care about me. They were only my party friends. They were only there because the drugs or alcohol were there. And so I was able to get to the point where, well, I don't, this isn't what I want. And I think my difficulty with it was I always wanted to be accepted and liked. And finally I was, but it was for the wrong reasons. And so everything seemed backwards about that to me. And I like what's genuine and authentic in the world. And so look at where we are now, having a genuine and authentic conversation about mental health and about the things that we've been through. And it's like, this is a space where people can share these types of stories. I know that we've had Andy Sharma share her story about becoming homeless through her drug addiction and things. And look at, she's a pilot and bringing food to people up north and like doing all sorts of great things in the world. And it's like, sometimes your darkness, it doesn't define you. You're able to evolve past it. And sometimes those dark things that happen can actually become your light and become your purpose. And I think likewise with what you're doing with these initiatives, to bring it full circle again, is you're making that impact and you're making that difference and you're taking this on as your mission, which is a beautiful thing. And it's needed and it's great what you're doing, and I know it's going to be an awesome thing. Yeah.
Thank you.
But I know there's definitely other things that we can talk about that are like fun and not to like make light or anything. Or...
No, there is actually one thing that I wanted to mention. A part of the See-Through initiative on our website, we have planned to make these different resourceful videos. Now, something that I do need is people to be in these videos. So my idea for resourceful videos would be that, you know, someone has gone through something specific. Let's say that it is anxiety on a daily basis, that they constantly have anxiety. I want to know, how do you cope with that, and how do they kind of overcome it on a daily basis? So that is one thing that will be on our website eventually once we start making them, is just 1 to 5 minute videos on, here's how I cope with my mental illnesses, because I don't believe in, personally, I don't believe in medication. That's just because my mother was on them for so long, and I've just seen how the different anxiety medications can affect different people. But coming back to the resources, is that along with not having as many accessible resources, I wanted to create a new one. So that is something that we are starting as well on our website.
Yeah, I'm thinking of, just in terms of my brain works, of how these videos would work, but it's like almost spot the symptoms and like, this is my story with it and this is what worked for me or something.
Exactly. My friend Sky, he's actually a photographer, and he uses his photography
Sky
to...
Spence?
Yep, Sky Spence.
Full circle.
Full circle. Sky Spence, yes, he's a photographer, and he has gone through many different mental health problems, and he uses his photography as his outlet. So that is one video that we will be posting fairly shortly, is how he uses creative outlets to manage his own mental health.
He's also an amazing photographer.
Very, very amazing.
Yeah, we actually... but we're getting in contact with him. Anyways, yeah, no, he's an amazing photographer, but it is interesting how the creative process is so much part of that healing, like that it can be so helpful for people. Like, and whether it's funny, we don't think of conversation as an art form, but it's like, what is going to see a psychologist other than having a conversation and being able to open up and like just share with somebody, right? And like conversation can be an art form. And then there's like, you can write, you can take photos, you can do all these different things. Like, I don't even know, you could probably lose yourself in fashion and like dressing yourself, whatever it is. But yeah.
But I think what you're trying to say does there really have to be that health degree in order to have a conversation of the sorts? No, there doesn't. You can have conversations with anybody on this topic and get advice that you never would have heard of.
Yeah, and well, on the piece of medications and things, I think that it is difficult to say that it can't be helpful in certain situations, right? Like my whole thing is, can you deal with this situation on your own, or does there have to be some sort of outside? Like we know in terms of hormones in the brain and like different chemicals and things, like if you were to have some sort of receptor issue with dopamine release, like you could have this issue that may need chemical intervention, right? And so it's, how do we diagnose, like what's something that somebody can, with the right resources, be able to either manage or get through, like with either those resources or themselves, or kind of like what's a natural way of going through it. And then at what point do we need that chemical intervention? And I think for the past 20 years, even longer, probably 50 years now, it's been, what's the pill that we can give them? I think of like, I was watching a vampire show and it was, somebody was going to get a lobotomy. And it's like, no, that was a real thing that they used to do to women with hysteria or people that had mental health issues. And it's like, okay, that was definitely not the right thing to do. And then it was, let's give them drugs and all sorts of things to like, and yet we see what's happening in terms of all these tragedies that are happening. There seems to be some element of mental health and or coming on or going off of prescription medications, and how that deals with, how that changes your outlook. Like Brody Stevens in the comedy community just committed suicide, which was really upsetting. And I thought of him as such a great comedic mind, and he always seemed to be like, positive energy, and like he'd have all these tags and things, and you don't realize what he's going through. And then it was him actually, either, I can't remember if it was going back on antidepressants or coming off of them, but it can send you into a psychosis, and that's when a lot of these things are happening. So it's like, there is definitely the dark side of that, and like where that, again, I'm not a health professional or a doctor, or like I can't diagnose that. I wish it was one of the 100 hats that I hope to wear, but it's like, yeah. So can we, like, I'm hoping that the studies and research is going into like, when should this be an intervention? And it does seem that there's now a push into holistic health and wellness. And I think that that's a little bit the message that I want to get out there too, is, and I see it as there's different pillars of people's health. There's physical, social, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual. And when you're healthy on all fronts, it's like you're a healthy, holistic person. If something's lacking, we should be determining what that is and seeing how we can intervene in that sense first before we ever try something like medications. So in a similar sense, my life was out of balance when it was completely a physical lifestyle. What could I have been doing, and like what wasn't I looking at in terms of that? Anyways, that's, I know, a little bit of a tangent and a rant, but
no, it's an interesting point you bring up, and it just kind of makes me think of just like 20 years ago, like you're talking about, like just what I think of is like if someone was going through depression or something, a lot of it's just like, okay, suck it up. Like there was no looking into it, and very rarely was someone diagnosed with either depression or bipolar, even like whatever. There's so many disorders out there. So I'm glad that people are talking about it now. Now, I feel like there's two sides of it, though. Now, and I don't like to be the negative person, but I always like to think of there's the flip side of it, is the people who try to take advantage of that. And what I mean by that is people who think that they're depressed and that they need medication and seek that not necessarily professional help, but help in the sense of like pill form, like I need this antidepressant because I'm depressed. Not realizing that like everyone goes through depression. It's a normal thing that we go through. It's just finding the way to cope with it that is something we need to do, and pills aren't necessarily the answer. Like Riley said, maybe there is a deeper issue that requires that chemical intervention, but that should be kind of a last resort.
Yeah. Definitely agree with that. My aunt, who I've been helping for several months now, was fairly addicted to all of her anxiety medications and was taking way too much of them and had no clue why. It was just something that she was doing because she felt it was necessary. But now that she's weaned off of all of these different medications, she's actually starting to feel better and feeling good about herself. And along with my help and things that I've helped her with in terms of her thinking process and, just being there for her and telling her I'm proud of her, I see her progress, she's a completely different person. And that's exactly it, is that medication shouldn't be the first thing that is thrown out there. Not everyone needs it. Some people do, yes, but not everyone needs it. And that's where we are trying to have another resource out there for people who need something else and don't want to try those medications right off the bat.
Yeah, I think a lot of people immediately just like, hey, I don't want to feel sad. What can I do right now to get rid of that? What's the quick fix?
The quick fix, yeah.
And the problem with that is that people then start self-medicating. And when you self-medicate, you're messing with your hormones on a whole other level. And if you decide to go on them and then go off them and not wean off them, then you're messing with your head in a whole different way that, like, to the point where then no one can help you, unfortunately, like that. So it's a dangerous thing. And I think people need to realize too that depression is normal, and you can't have the good days without the bad days. And the bad days, I think, help you appreciate those good days as well.
Yeah, there is that mentality of just like, there's an issue, go to the doctor. And the thing that I wanted to bring up was like, there is this over prescribing, and who's benefiting from this? It's the big drug companies, pharmaceutical companies that, well, we want people to be taking this because we care about our bottom line and the money coming in. Who knows, like, what's the level of care to that person if you're a big corporation? You're not even on the front lines selling to them or whatever, or like prescribing it to them. You don't see them in these states. So, at what point, and it should be, you'd like to think that doctors aren't going to prescribe just anybody who comes in some sort of opioid for pain or some sort of antidepressant for anything that's going on. But what does it cost to become a doctor? Hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they're in debt and things. So it's like there just seems to be like this not care for the individual in that. And we buy into it too. I think that the mentality on the personal level needs to change and not look for that quick fix. You have to be willing to, like, I wish we had a view that was like, let's seek other methods of help before I ever seek out the health professional. But some people do look for the easy way. So I don't know how we get to those people. Like, how do you change people?
If we were to change the conversation from mental health to body pain or joint pain, that conversation looks very differently in terms of what is the quick fix? Because that's what people look for in terms of joint pain, right? Like, what is the quick fix? It's so common, and it's like every day, like, you don't even think about it. Well, I'm in pain, I'm just going to take some Advil. I'm just going to go buy some Advil or Tylenol. Like, those are just common things that a large majority of the population takes, but they're bad for you. Like, they're not, like, you can overdose on Tylenol and it will kill you. Like, that is a real thing that can happen. And it's not good for your body. It doesn't digest it very well. It doesn't break it down very well. And over time, and there are more natural ways to deal with it. One of them being things like CBD oil. I'm not to advocate for it, but like it is a more natural way, and you can't overdose on CBD. Or looking for a solution to that issue in either fitness or in stretching or in yoga, like Riley did for his back. But that can be translated over to mental health too. Like, at what point does that become the issue where, like, we can just go buy over-the-counter antidepressants?
Yeah. And one thing that I did want to touch on was the other day I was reading just an article, and in the article it said, you are not mentally ill or mentally healthy. You're not one or the other. You can still be mentally healthy, but have those feelings and feel, depressed every once in a while. Doesn't matter if you're a man, if you're a woman, if you're, 80 or if you're 15, you can still have those feelings. It doesn't matter who you are. And I just found that that article, that piece of the article was really inspiring, and that everyone goes through it. Doesn't matter if you are clinically diagnosed with an actual mental illness, you can still be mentally healthy and have those feelings or those emotions.
Yeah, everyone goes through depression. That's the thing we keep coming back to. But I think we just see it so much on Instagram and social media that like these celebrities or just even other people living these amazing lives, but we don't see the dark times in their lives. Like, I just want to live that way. I want to be happy all the time. Like, you can't be happy all the time. Those people who make millions of dollars aren't happy all the time because money doesn't solve their issues. They still have issues. That's why you see celebrities get into things like drugs and alcohol problems, like because they don't know what to do with their money, right?
Yeah, it's tough with that level of inauthenticity in the world, but we promote it. Maybe it's subconsciously, maybe it's consciously. I think we like to just disassociate sometimes. Like, I'm a fan of trashy TV with the best of them, but it's like there's something really staged about, whether it's TV shows and social media. It's finding the proper lighting, and it's finding who's getting the most likes, how much makeup are they wearing, what are they portraying, what quote are they putting in there, that like which Marilyn Monroe quote are we putting in today? Like, I'm making light of it, but there is sort of this like just oversharing, over like wanting the attention kind of mentality that we have going on too.
And I think the contrast comes into what you're trying to do, and I think that's super important in sharing the stories and sharing what the other side looks like, right? The not like on the beach smiling with coconut, whatever, margarita
yeah,
in your hand. Like, that's not what they live every day. This is the hard time I had to go through to get there, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Behind Our Eyes was like the first project that was birthed through Avery, of course, was just her personal experience and her writing and seeing that she could bring light to others through that. But the See-Through initiative is a much larger picture, and that's what we wanted to bring together. Is it's a transparent view of unified advocates, just bringing light to mental health awareness, and we're doing that through different outlets. But it's taking regular people in everyday lives. It could be your neighbor, it could be your friend, it could be your family. And I mean, right now it starts here. It could go global. I mean, not global, but it could expand into other provinces or into different places just through connections. But I mean, it's taking away do I go see a therapist today? Am I taking more drugs? What is it? It's more so, I don't think those things are temporary, but I personally have someone in my life who keeps, let's just double it. Let's double the amount. Let's double the amount. Let's double the amount. She feels good for 2 weeks and then she crashes. And it's like, how much more drugged up can you possibly get? Mm-hmm. And so that's why we're finding different resources, and it's just personal stories, personal resources, such as, we spoke about Sky, it's photography, Avery, it's writing, myself was just a personal development, and then moving into business and realizing where I could take that. But at the end of the day, it's more of a stable thing. And how did this individual move past depression or bipolar disorder or anxiety, or how are they maintaining and balancing it to just live every day, to be able to continue beyond that illness? And it's just taking away the drugs, and it's taking away the therapists and stuff. It's not taking them away. It's bringing together everything, because everyone's got their own coping mechanisms that work for them.
So then what's the ideal future for the initiative?
The ideal future for the initiative? The ideal future is just to have, as I said, kind of a community, a space where I've got a friend who needs support. I can offer it to them to a certain extent, but I can also say, hey, here's a place for you to go. I don't know what is going to help you, but they might find themselves on the website and know that they've got a camera at home that's been sitting, and now I found Sky on this website, and he's talking about how this has helped him. And then it brings those two together, and it brings photography together. And now this person understands that that's what I find joy in. It's that small thing. And now I can go out and do that on a daily basis, or when I'm feeling down, and it gets them out of bed and it gets them to do it. And that's just an example because it's been brought up on a few instances in this. But the vision is just a place where people can go to find what their fix, their coping mechanism is, and explore that through there, and then be able to reach out to that individual or reach out to us. And that's the one side. The second side is being able to help others who are wanting to bring more impact to the world and change other people's lives through this, because they've been able to overcome it and offer a place for them to express that, or share their story, or share their message, or how they've been able to help others.
To add to that, so the basic idea would be, let's say we have an artist and they've painted 20 canvases. They want to do something to help other people, but they don't know what. Okay, I have all these canvases. I'm going to contact the See-Through Initiative and see if we can collaborate together and set up an event where I can sell these, which would then become a mental health awareness event. And that's just bringing people together. We're selling these canvases, but it's not necessarily to do with the creative side of things, more so to do with bringing everyone together to one simple location and having the awareness events on a regular basis. But for me, when I was looking for a place to do Behind Our Eyes, or somewhere where I could donate money to, things like that, I didn't really know, because I wanted to actually plan the event and I wanted to, be a part of it rather than just say, here, take my book and sell it for me. And so since I couldn't find anything like that, I created it. Now people can come to us, and we eventually are hoping to have things like funding and sponsorships and whatnot, so that we can actually facilitate all of these different ideas that other people and other creators have, but they don't have anywhere to do it. Yeah,
I think something that's amazing how this is evolving, and this vision that you have for it. I think one of the big things that's sort of been on the periphery of what we've been talking about is the fact of finding purpose. And I think that how helpful that is in being a healthy person, a holistically healthy person. And I think that has to do with the spiritual part. And to me, spirituality is just being a good person and finding what that means to you and aiming towards whatever that purpose, that light is for you. And so, but purpose can be found, this is what we've been talking about this whole time. And that's what I like about these resources, in terms of if you're having these creative stories and what people are doing to help their mental health plight or whatever they're going through. It's dabble, find that thing and find that purpose and aim high and go for it. And life becomes so much more fulfilling. And that's the term that I've started using for my own life, in terms of what my aiming point is that fulfillment. It's not happiness, because I think that that's fleeting. It's not perfection, because that's unattainable. And I think you sometimes go through these different iterations and these different, you see the ending point as being different at different points in your life. But to me, it's fulfillment, and purpose is what gets you there. So sharing our voice, sharing your writing, sharing poems, sharing artwork, and having a place to go with all these, and even having events that support it and bring mental health awareness. It's yes, this encompasses the whole thing. And I think I'm guessing here, but I'm thinking that that's what you're hoping to accomplish with this as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. So are there any events coming up? Is there anything planned so far? Is there a book launch, or is there something going to be happening in the near future?
It's a very slow process, getting together these people and bringing light to it and sharing the message. The foundation is set. We're slowly executing on it. We're doing different things. There will be an event coming up with a book launch, but of course the book needs to be completed. So what we're looking for right now is just people who want to share through any means, whatever that is, whether it's art, whether it's writing, whether it's video, and just sharing their story verbally. Music, anything that they want to bring towards it. Even music, we can pull lyrics out and put it into the book. We're looking for all ages, whether you're 12 or 10 or 25, I don't know, maybe you're in Mexico and you're 80 and you're writing a story about
For sure.
something that you've dealt with.
So what's the best outlet for submissions to get in contact with you?
Definitely through the website. There is a contact us page which goes directly to the C3 Initiative's email. So just www.thec3initiative.com and go to the contact us page.
We've also just started social media and stuff, and that's kind of another place that people can go and share. So if anybody wants to share a story or share a post or have anything to say, they can just share it with the C3 Initiative, and we'll repost it or anything.
So you mentioned. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
You said that you're looking for all kind of forms of content. Mm-hmm. Is there a certain criteria that any of it needs to meet?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay.
For the book itself, I'm looking for different, photos, small sketches, and poems or stories. Obviously, if they are under the age of 18, they do need a parent's signature on the copyright release form, which I provide. That is just to cover myself in case someone doesn't like that I put it in the book.
I think as far as criteria, as long as somebody has dealt with a mental illness, whether they're in the process of recovering, I think that for me, I've never recovered from it. I've just grown stronger and understand myself better, that I can have the ability to maintain it and grow past it. So I think the criteria is not a matter of A, B, C. Mm-hmm. You've met all. It's a matter of, have you dealt with one of these things or a mental illness, and have you recovered from it? If so, and you've got an outlet or a resource of some sort, please bring it to our attention. It's a safe place.
Awesome. Glad to hear it.
So calling all contributors or collaborators out there, feel free to send in the stuff. I think I'm going to sign up right here in front of you. I feel like I'll throw that over to Jayse too. No?
No, definitely.
But yeah, I think this is such a great thing to be putting out there, especially sort of in honor of the city too, and all the creators and collaborators and all the people doing wonderful things in the city. I will ask you one last question before we wrap up here. What would you say to someone wanting to make a positive difference in their life or towards helping others?
I would say to go all in, and if they have an idea or something that they want to get out there, to not be afraid of judgment, not be afraid of what's going to come back at you, because like we were discussing, that one positive comment means the world.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Dakotah, do you have anything as well? I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Not at all. Do you want to just repeat the question quickly? Because
sure.
I had a thought and I'm trying to...
What would you say to someone wanting to make a positive change in their life or towards helping others?
I think it's a matter of just coming to terms and understanding where you're at. And I mean, if it's the darkest place possible, just admit it. It's a dark place. I am where I am. And what's the next small step I can take, even if it's just an inch? And it's just a matter of seeking it. So,
Well said.
Yeah. Very well said. I think
you.
that's exactly it, is get the ball rolling,
Yeah.
one foot in front of the other, and you'll get there. Yes. So thank you so much for joining us. This has been
Thank you.
This has been one of the most revealing and honest conversations that we've had on here. And not knowing anything going in, but I'm so glad that we can get this information out there to support the See-Through Initiative. Yes, and Behind Our Eyes. I'm trying to get the names exactly right. I know that we've said them a bunch of times. And the collaboration anthology Behind Our Eyes, so that I say it right. But yeah, everything that you're doing, really support it. And it's obviously touched everyone in this room, so there's got to be people at home that are sitting there being like, I'm going through this as well, or at least something similar, so they can take things from this conversation as well, and all your amazing projects. So thank you again for sitting here and chatting with us.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate being on.
Awesome.
I just want to know, you did mention social media. Is there anywhere people can find you on any of those social media? Do you have anything set up right now?
We've just started them recently. All the handles are just the See-Through Initiative.
See-Through Initiative. Okay.
We are also, to bring another note up, we are looking for any volunteers or anybody who wants to help, distribute flyers or distribute on their social media to find more of these submissions, because although we're trying to change many things and help many people, we do need a lot to help make those changes as well. So
for sure, and we'll have the links up on social media and with the podcast as well, so that they can find the website and they can find where to contribute and collaborate as well.
Thank you.
And as always, we're Be the Change. You can find us on social media at Be the Change YPS. Or you can head to the website, find all of our content at bethechangeyps.com. Our email, as always, well, maybe not in the beginning stages with all the dots and things, but now it's info@bethechangeyps.com. Please subscribe and like wherever you're listening, whether that's on YouTube or Spotify or iTunes or iOS. I don't care, just listen. All right, well, thank you again.
Thank you.
Take care out there, everyone.
Take care.